Hello students. The next lesson what we're going to go on to is tertiary economic activity. Now, while reading this passage, you have come across a lot of occupations. Man cannot use some of the products received from these activities directly because there are some natural resources which are used, and when natural resources are used, it becomes primary activities. These products can be used again by increasing their values or making them more durable. In that case, these products are processed. This creates new and different products. These are usable, more durable, and can be sold at higher prices. Processing these activities becomes a part of secondary activities. Secondary activities are mainly dependent on products obtained from primary activities. The first lesson what we finished was primary activity or primary based industries. Um, we spoke about secondary activities. The third part is the tertiary activities. There are activities which are linked between primary and secondary activities and are complementary to both of them. These are mostly in the form of services. If you want a particular service, you have to pay for it. These include buying and selling of goods. Now let's understand, before I begin this lesson, the evolution of the economy from primary sector to tertiary sector. During early civilization, all economic activity was in primary sector. When the food production became surplus, people's needs for other products increased. This led to the development of secondary sector. After growth of previous two economic activities, a support system was the need to facilitate the industrial activity. Certain sectors like transport and finance play an important role in supporting the industrial activity. More shops became need, and then ultimately other services like tuition, administrative support developed. These came under the tertiary sector. So you all can see how there was an evolution during the early civilization. Primary sector was more important. As things progressed, secondary and tertiary came into the picture. Now, secondary activity, the last topic what we did was secondary sector or economic activities. What was done over here was processes new materials from the primary sector and supplies it to the tertiary sector. Input is used to manufacture products by means of production process. The result is called output. Manufacturing can include manufacturing of semi-finished products that are sold to manufacturers or customers. Semi-finished products can be further used in productions of goods or finished products such as metal sheets used to make tin cans. Now this we have done a lot about, we've spoken and discussed a lot about secondary sector. Now how does this chain, or how do they get connected with one another or interdependent? Now first understand what's the meaning in simple terms of tertiary sector. Activities in this sector including bringing the products from the secondary sector to the end consumers, transport of people, communications, and many other services such as education, health, banking, and administration. Now, primary activities or primary sector was more concerned with the natural resources which are available: agriculture, farming, fishing, all of that. Then we went on to secondary sector, which deals with the processing, the manufacturing of goods and services. Now the tertiary sector is for the services which have been provided, and they complement primary and secondary sector. It is you are bringing the products from secondary sector, you are going to deliver it to the consumer or transport it. There is communication happening. There are many other services also. Education comes in the tertiary sector where you're paid for your services, banking, administration, all of that, health. Now, what is the link between these sectors? Primary sector extract wood from trees. Now, what would be at a primer level, what it would be? You extract wood from trees. It's a natural resource. Trees are natural resource. So, wood is extracted from there. Then what goes on? Secondary sector manufactures woods from the primary sector into tables and chairs. Now the wood or the trees which have been extracted, from the trees, the wood what is being extracted is further processed in an industry or a factory into tables and chairs. So this becomes secondary because there's manufacturing happening, there's some processing happening. The third one is the tertiary sector. Now, the tertiary sector delivers the tables and chairs to the end users. Now, why are these tables and chairs manufactured, students? Because they are supposed to be delivered to the end customers. So, there is a demand which was created, and to fulfill that demand, the services are provided to reach that demand to the proper consumer, to the particular consumer. So this delivers the tables and chairs to the end users. Now, this sector includes all the activities that provide intangible goods and services. It does not create or manufacture. There is no manufacturing, production, processing happening in this sector, mind you, students. Its aim is to provide services. So the important term what you can associate with tertiary sector is services. Now, what kind of services? What do you mean by services? There are different kinds of services. I'm going to talk about it in detail. Then there are how it is associated with the developed countries and how it is associated with the developing countries. What is the difference between the two? We are going to learn about that. And which other places can this be applicable? Differences between developed and developing countries, whereas in developing countries this sector has a very important role in economy. In developing countries, the number of people who work in the tertiary sector is less than 30%. Service sector is divided into subsectors. What are they? Tourism also is a service industry, hospital management, transportation and communications, and commerce. Commerce is business, trade, dealings, what you do. So this basically, this slide, what does it tell us? That there is a difference between how it works in a developing country. I will talk to about it in detail in the next clip. Then it talks about the intangible goods and services. There are different sectors in it. Now, tourism. What tourism can we think of? It relates to the temporary movement of people from one place to another to enjoy their free time. It is therefore related to leisure. So tourism comes under the tertiary sector. Transport and communication, it relates to the movement of people and goods, road, rail, rivers, sea and air, and communicating information, new technology. We know this commonly. We've spoken about tourism and transport in any different way also. I have come up with this. Now, commerce. Understand how commerce comes under the tertiary sector. It involves distributing and selling of products from primary and secondary sectors. Until and unless these are not distributed or reach the end customers, it's of no use. These sectors are basically working for the end customers. We can distinguish domestic trade, that is it takes place within the borders of the country. Anything which is within the borders is domestic. These exchanges can be divided into two basic groups. What are the two basic groups? Wholesale trade, we know. I spoke about wholesalers, which we have big wholesalers in market yard. So they are the biggest wholesalers, whether vegetable market or the fruits. So we have a wholesale market. The wholesale trade is done, which moves large quantity of merchandise in order to sell it to the merchants or companies. And retail trade, which involves buying from wholesalers. Now your shopkeepers, your small shopkeepers who are doing small businesses, go and get their stuff from retailers and selling directly to the consumers. See, everything is reaching to the consumers, to the customers. Foreign trade. Now this is the exchange of goods and services between a country and the rest of the world. There are two types of exchange, exports and imports. Also, I have spoken about in the last lesson. Exports over here are which are the goods and services that are sold to foreign countries. We sell a lot of products to foreign countries and it gives us revenue. There are imports also happening, which are goods and services produced abroad and brought into the country. Now, how does this work? Positive balance of trade is when exports is more than imports. So it is surplus. It is surplus. Negative balance of trade is when exports is less than imports. Means what we are exporting is less than what we are selling is more than our buying. So then it's a different scenario altogether. Now, services. As I said, I'll be talking about services in detail. We are going to understand services from every angle. They include anything from essential services like healthcare, education, to activities such as advertising and legal services. Now, healthcare. It includes all the services that are intended to prevent and treat human illnesses. Healthcare is anything related to your medical issues, your well-being. This service can be provided by both private and government bodies. Although the government usually plays a significant role in providing public healthcare services, as a very few people can afford private healthcare. You all have seen during the COVID-19, there are a lot of facilities which are given from the government, and you all can hear a lot of other things also which have been provided by the government. Education. It includes all of the services that are used to provide people with education and training. It is very important for a society because the right to an education means that it will make possible to obtain a job and adapt to life, to live in a society. So we can distinguish between what is right and wrong. So education also comes under this section. Now, what is the interdependency of economic sectors? Now, an example of cold drink is taken. How they are interdependent, primary, secondary, and tertiary. What happens? Now, cold drink contains water, sugar, and artificial flavor. Take for that matter 7 Up, Thumbs Up, Pepsi, Cola, whatever. Suppose if there is no sugarcane production, then producing or procuring sugar will become difficult and costly for the cold drink manufacturer. Now, to transport sugarcane to sugar mills and sugar to the cold drink plant needs the services of a transporter. A person or system of person is required to maintain and monitor all these movements of goods from farm to factory to shop in different locations. Now I am producing or I have sugarcane farms and I am producing sugar. Now the sugar has to be utilized somewhere in some form. If it is not utilized or it's not reaching from the farm to factory and from the factory to the consumers, it's of no use. The sectors what we are learning are of no use. There needs to be usability, proper usability of products. That is where the role of administrative staff comes. Now this is what they are talking about. Let us go back to the farmer. He needs fertilizers and seeds which is processed in some factory, of course, which will be delivered to his doorstep by some means of transportation. Now, how does he get these products delivered? It's through transportation. So there's some service being provided, or else he'll not be able to proceed further. To top it all, every step of these activities, we require the proper monetary and banking system. Yes, all our banking facilities, our credit facilities have to be in place. Nothing happens without money. Money is imperative for survival. Now, what kind, how much money, that depends on individuals. So, in a nutshell, this describes how interrelated all sectors of an economy are. I hope you all have understood the interdependency. They are beautiful examples where the farmer also or the cold drink basic things are concerned and how it is interconnected and how money plays a pivotal role. Now, service. What is services? A type of economic activity that is intangible, is not stored, and does not result in ownership. It's not that you're going to keep it permanently with yourself. You don't own it. It is consumed at the point of sale. Services are one of the two key components of economics, the other being goods. Examples of services include transfer of goods, like postal service delivering mail, use of expertise or experience, such as a person visiting a doctor. Now, a person who goes to a doctor would go to a doctor who has those credentials, who is educated, and who can solve the issue at the right time. Now, service sector activities. Now, it covers a wide array of activities. What are these wide array of activities? Services provided by most sophisticated sectors like telecommunications, satellite mapping, and computer software. Now, what are the different kinds? Simple services like those are performed by the barber, the carpenter, and the plumber. See, in exchange, you are getting some money for the services provided. The barber cuts your hair, so he's providing a service, and in exchange, you're giving him money. Same for the carpenter and the plumber. High capital intensive activities like civil aviation and shipping. That is on a very, very large scale. Employment oriented is like tourism. Again, it's leisure, recreational, real estate when you're buying property or renting a property, leasing, and housing. Now, infrastructure related. Infrastructure related can be roads, railways, ports. Social sector related activities like health and education. There is no one size fits all definition of services, resulting in some overlapping and some borderline inclusions. Now, please understand what services come under this: trade, hotels and restaurants, transport. This is very simple to understand now. Transport including tourist assistance activities, as well as activities of travel agencies and tour operators. There are tour operators, there are people sitting in all corners of the world helping you out with your travel. Storage and communication, banking and insurance, real estate and ownership of dwellings, business services including accounting, software development, data processing services. This is all IT related, computer related. Business and management consultancy, architectural, engineering, and other technical consultancy. All of these consultancy services come into this. Advertisement is also service industry and other business services. Public administration and defense. Other services including education, medical and health, religious and other community services, legal services, recreational and entertainment services. So I hope when you all keep reading these services, you all will very well be able to relate it to the tertiary sector and why it is considered a service industry or a tertiary industry. Now, service sector basically is the lifeline for the social economic growth of a country. Very simple basic fact. The real reason for the growth of the service sector is due to increase in urbanization. There was a whole big lecture on urbanization what I had given, privatization and more demand for intermediate and final consumer services. This scenario is a direct result of globalization. Last topic what I spoke about MNCs, I've spoken about what globalization means. Now understand what globalization has played, what major role it is playing or it has played in the development of each of these sectors. After 1991, when globalization prominently entered India, service sector experienced a sudden boom in advance. So there was a lot of development happening after 1991 as globalization took a center stage. You can say there was a boom in the service sector industry. In advanced economies, the growth in the primary and the secondary sectors are directly dependent on the growth of services like banking, insurance, trade, commerce, entertainment. Service sector is also a major contributor of national employment and income in recent days. Of course, It's contributing to the economy because for the services what you're providing, you're being paid for it. So every service, nothing is done for charities, students. If you all see the sectors which come under the tertiary or the service industry, it's none of them are for charity. So definitely they are going to generate a lot of income and employment. And in recent times also they have generated, and further on also they will generate. Now the tertiary economic sector, as I told you all, I'm going to talk about the developed and developing countries and how do they have importance, or how there is a difference between the two. How do we look at them? Now in developed countries, services are very widespread, and the majority of people have access to basic services such as healthcare and education. In many countries, the service industry accounts for a large share of GDP and employment. In developing countries, services are insufficient. Mind you, students, understand developed countries' situation and developing countries. The services are insufficient, and most of the population does not have access to the basic services. We are seeing in our country itself, there are some sections, certain hotspots wherein the services are not, basic services also are not there. We are developing. That's why we are saying we are one of those developing countries. We are not developed completely. The sector is far less important in terms of employment and GDP, as low paid services requiring few qualifications predominate, such as domestic service and street traders. Now, the classification of services, what can we understand? I have gone in depth. I would stick to being in depth for these topics so that you understand it. Private or market services are provided by private companies who charge money to people or other companies who require the services. Their main objective is to earn profits. Public or non-market services are provided by the state with money collected through taxes. We pay our taxes, we are taxpayers. Some people pay heavy taxes. So through these taxes, only certain services are provided by the state or the central government. Their purpose is to provide basic services to society. We are here to serve, the government is here to serve the society, its citizens, for their betterment and standard of living, to make them secure and also make the economy viable rather than just making profits. They include public administration, healthcare, and education. So what comes under non-market certificates, services or public services? Their healthcare, administration, and education. So you all can see the bifurcation, the division how, and the private is also different. That comes with companies. Location of the services. How is the location of the services like? Traditionally, providers have located themselves close to consumers. Of course, that's something which everybody would want to. The most specialized were located in large cities, while less specialized ones were distributed more uniformly around the country. Today, improvements in transport and new communication technologies, with the advent of technology and the way we are progressing via technology, it means that certain services have moved to areas with lower costs. The costs have reduced, such as small and medium-sized towns and underdeveloped regions. Now, this means of transportation and communication, loading and unloading of goods, credit facilities, marketing, import and export, providing public services are also a part of it. Um, these also fall into the category of tertiary sector. Other services like knife grinders, vegetable sellers, shopkeepers, passengers, carriers, postal services are also included in tertiary activities. Now, students, you all have seen how many activities come under, how many services or activities come under the tertiary sector. So postal services, passengers, vegetable sellers, shopkeepers, all of that, if you see in continuity, these services are provided in exchange of money. So these services are called tertiary economic activities. There is economic value for it. Now, look at the classification of the tertiary economic activities: trade and commerce, transportation, communication, and other services. Now, trade and commerce. Trade and commerce is divided into wholesale and retail trade. Wholesalers are the big, huge marketers who sell to retailers. Urban wholesale markets, and then there are rural wholesale market. Now, the retail market is rural and urban. Rural is in the village area, periodic markets, stores, street peddling, public distribution systems. Urban is chain stores, shop malls. The malls, what you all are seeing, they come to the retail trade, public distribution system. Then comes the transportation. Now, when we talk about transportation, transportation can be done through all four channels or mode of transportation: rail, road, water, air, and pipeline also. I have spoken to you all about pipeline too. Then comes the communication part of it. Now, when you look at the communication part of it, there are so many categories in it, which are those: postal services, telecommunication, audiovisual, internet, satellite system. Now, when you look at telecommunication, mobile and landline. Initially, what we had before the advent of mobiles, we used to communicate only through telephones, which were there at home, landlines. Mobile phones now they have become an integral part of our lives. Audio visual. What is audio visual? Films, radio, television, and print media. That is newspapers, magazines. Then there is then we can talk about satellite system. Now the satellite, the other services which are there, tourism also is one of the service industry. Hospitality industry is also very important. Banking, insurance, real estate, personal and professional services. Now, students, one thing I'll make it clear: the tertiary sector in itself is a very wide concept and it has so many services. If you sit and study or try and study all these services, you will realize one thing in common is they are different in nature, but what they provide is services. So this classification, this table is very important. It will help you all connect to the learning what we are going to do right now, the different examples what we are going to go through via the tertiary sector. And all these are four main topics or the categories which come under the tertiary sector is of great importance in today's times. Trade and commerce, it's very important in today's times because globalization is there. Everybody needs to grow their economy. Businesses need to grow. Transportation is definitely there. When there is demand, there's supply. So to keep that supply chain going, transportation is important. Communication now is growing via the social media, internet. So all of that is also very important. Other services, as I said, everything is growing big. Tourism industry, hospitality industry has grown beyond after, I mean, what it was 10 years ago. It's more ahead than what it was. Real estate, insurance, as I said, insurance now has become very important in a country itself. Everybody needs to be insured. Why? Because given the medical costs which one has to go through, it's not affordable most of the times. So insurance is something very important. Banking facilities, there are so many banks: cooperative banks, nationalized, state banks, different merged banks, HDFC, IDBI, Kotak is there, national banks, Indian Bank, Reserve Bank of India, sorry, State Bank of India. All of these banks have different roles to play in the growth and development. Pipelines also, you all are seeing underground pipelines. How are they useful? Audio visual, definitely now, uh, take for that matter, as on now, what we are doing today as teachers, there it's like online teaching is there, so it plays a pivotal role. Then internet, it's a part of your lives today when you are doing projects. So how all of this plays an important role. So each of these services which are provided, they are provided in exchange of money, or what you get in return is money. So these are, that's why I said, when you think about tertiary economic activities, the only word which comes to your mind or should come to your mind, oh, it is service related. Oh, primary activities, this is natural resources. This is basic being amongst nature. Secondary resources, when I immediately talk about, it should click in your mind that it is manufacturing, processing. It deals something to do with goods, production of goods and services. So I hope till now I am clear with how have we identified or each of these sectors and how we've given a identification with just a one word allotted to each of these sectors.